Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Firewalls Don't Stop Dragons. I'm your host, Kerry Parker. Today we have episode 471 for March 9th, 2026. And I just need to take a moment here to give a shout out to myself. This is the official 9th anniversary of the podcast. I started all of this back on March 8th of 2017. And I put out a podcast every single week for 9 straight years, except I think there was one week where I had a technical glitch when I was moving to a new podcasting hosting service, that is, back in December of 2018. But I don't think I have missed one since. Now, I've put out some replay episodes and things like that, usually with fresh intros and outros, but I don't think I've missed one in 9 years. That's pretty amazing. Very, very few podcasts last anywhere near this long, first of all. And most of them go on a hiatus from time to time, and for whatever dumb reason, I don't. But, I guess I just am committed to bringing you something new every week. So anyway, I just thought I should take a second here to pat myself on the back. I'm very proud of what I've done here, and I'm looking forward to doing it for many more years. So I should mention again that we are on the road to 500. That is 500 episodes. That is just 29 episodes away. The 500th podcast will be in late September, but I am planning on doing some sort of fun stuff to celebrate this really major milestone as we approach the big 500. So I'll have a countdown to 500 or something like that. And by the way, your ideas are welcome. Just shoot me an email, or if you're a patron, you can hit me up on Discord. All right, we got a news show for you today. We'll start off with a story about Amazon. They're changing how their public wish lists work in such a way that it could expose your address to people buying you something. Google and iVerify have revealed a government-grade iPhone exploit. Israel hacked Tehran's traffic cameras and used AI to assassinate the leader of Iran. Meta's Ray-Ban video glasses are a privacy nightmare, to no one's surprise. You may have seen an article about Wi-Fi routers being compromised. I'll give you the real deal on that and tell you why it's not quite as big a deal as they're making it out to be. Microsoft Office has a bug that exposed customers' confidential emails via AI. Discord has canceled its age verification rollout, at least for now, and they're making some promises that are good. Senators have reintroduced a bill to create transparency for court-ordered surveillance. Privacy activists in California are asking them to remove covert license plate readers. And I've got a couple new things to tell you about. One is Ente Locker, which is very cool. And another is a really amazing set of guides and tools put out by Privacy Guides. And then finally, we'll get to my tip of the week. This has gotten really important. So I mentioned this in passing a little while back, but we need to talk about ClickFix. And I'm going to tell you how to recognize it, what you can do to prevent it, and why you shouldn't have to. All right, so lots to talk about. Let's get to the news. All right, first up, Amazon is changing how their public wish lists work. I've been using Amazon wish lists for a long time, but it's always been a private thing with me and my family. And frankly, it's not that great. I'd like to find a different solution. But if for some reason you're using wish lists and your wish lists are public on Amazon, you're going to want to listen up. All right, Amazon is telling people who use its wish lists feature to switch to post office boxes or non-residential delivery addresses if they want to ensure their home addresses remain private, as part of a change in how it processes gifts bought from third-party sellers. The change is especially concerning to many sex workers, influencers, and public figures who use Amazon wish lists, that's really hard to say, to receive gifts from fans and clients. First spotted by adult content creators raising the alarm on social media, the changes open anyone who uses wish lists publicly to increased privacy risk unless they change how they receive packages. In an email sent to list holders, Amazon said beginning March 25th, it will reveal users' shipping addresses to third-party sellers. The platform added that gift purchasers might end up seeing your address as part of this process too. Before this change, the only information visible to sellers and gift purchases, I think they mean purchasers, was the recipient's city and state, which, still gives away a little bit of information. Anyway, this is a quote from this email that Amazon sent out, and it says, We're writing to inform you about an upcoming change to Amazon lists. Starting March 25th, 2026, we will remove the option to restrict purchases from third-party sellers for list items. When this change takes effect, gift purchasers will be able to purchase items sold by third-party sellers from your lists, and your delivery address will be shared with the seller for fulfillment. I mean, it makes sense. If they're going to do that, they kind of have to know where to ship it. This change will provide gift purchasers with access to a wider selection of items when shopping from your lists. Important note, when gifts are purchased from your shared or public list, that's different. They were talking about public before, this means shared as well. Amazon needs to provide your shipping address to sellers and delivery partners to fulfill these orders. During the delivery process, your address may become visible to gift purchasers through delivery updates and tracking information. To help protect your privacy, we recommend using a P.O. box or non-residential address for any list you share with public audiences, unquote. So if you have public wish lists, you can manage individual list settings here, and that's a link to, I assume, something on Amazon, and select Manage List. From there, you can change your list privacy settings to private or shared to limit who has access, and remove your shipping address entirely by selecting None from the drop-down menu. I don't know how that would work. Anyway, most of the popular shopping methods in the U.S., including UPS, FedEx, and USPS, don't show full addresses as part of package tracking. But if a third-party seller shares a gift recipient's home address with a buyer as part of the tracking process, Amazon is saying that's out of the platform's control. And some of those delivery services send photos as part of the tracking process for proof of delivery, which could include more information about one's home or location than they would want a gift sender to see. Okay, so they talked about who this was potentially going to impact. And yes, there are influencers and other people who have a public persona who, as a way to make money or support themselves, ask people to send them stuff. And so they have public wish lists. They send that out and they say, go buy me stuff off this and off of Amazon, and it gets shipped to them. Well, Amazon does a lot of third-party reselling stuff. It's a big storefront for a lot of companies that are not Amazon. So what they're saying is, if you have a public list, so anybody can buy anything off that list and have it shipped to you, they obviously need your shipping address to know where to send it. And now they're supporting third-party sellers on your wish lists. And if you have a third-party seller ship something to you, whoever bought that for you may get shipping updates that would include your shipping address. And so Amazon's solution to this is not to give you the option to not allow third-party sellers. No. But their solution is, well, just go get a P.O. box or some other shipping address. So this is not just dumb. This is dangerous. There are people that rely on these sorts of things to make a living. And there are other people, of course, who just make their Amazon wish list public. So I'm here to tell you, don't make them public, make them private. Share them specifically with the people that you want to actually send you stuff. If you can. I mean, obviously, again, that some people, this is how they make money. This is how they support themselves. This is how they get stuff. So anyway, that's what you could do about it. But I hope there's kind of a backlash over this, and Amazon gives you at least the option to say, look, I'd rather have my privacy and not have to go get myself a P.O. box, which is not cheap, and then have the inconvenience of having to go to that P.O. box to get all my deliveries. And just let people check a box that says, I'm fine not accepting stuff from third-party resellers. All right, next up, this is from 9to5Mac, and it's about a new exploit kit that uses some pretty heavy-duty stuff, but in the end, it's nothing to worry about as long as you stay up to date. Okay, Google's threat intelligence group and security company iVerify, who we've had on the show before, and honestly, I really need to get them back, have shared details about Coruna, that's C-O-R-U-N-A, an exploit kit that chains multiple vulnerabilities to target iPhones running older iOS versions. As spotted by Wired, and Wired had a really long article on this. That's why I picked the 9to5Mac version, because it's a lot shorter. Anyway, as spotted by Wired, a post published today on the Google Cloud blog reveals details of an exploit kit called Coruna, which leverages 5 full iOS exploit chains and 23 vulnerabilities to compromise unpatched iPhones running iOS 13 through iOS 17.2.1. And just for reference, the latest version of iOS is iOS 26, and the one before that was iOS 18. They changed their numbering systems to match the calendar year. So that's why we skipped from 18 straight to 26. But anyway, these are older versions of iOS, so as long as you're up to date, you're in good shape. But let me finish the article. At a very high level, the Karuna exploit kit works by chaining multiple vulnerabilities to progressively breach the iPhone's security layers. After visiting a malicious site that uses hidden JavaScript to check the device model, system version, and other security settings, the attack can take multiple routes to bypass core iOS protections, gain high-level privileges, and install malware that can collect data or even download additional modules. Interestingly, Google notes that the exploit checks whether the device has lockdown mode enabled and aborts the process if so, or if the user is in private browsing mode. To be clear, the exploit kit targets iPhones running older iOS versions and is ineffective against the latest system versions. This is one of many reasons why it's important to keep one's devices updated. For a much deeper look into how Karuna works, as well as the full list of vulnerabilities and their CVE numbers when available, that target each individual iOS release between 13 and 17.2.1, check the full post or on the Google Cloud blog. According to Google's post, mobile security company iVerify also published a report on Karuna, offering additional context about its possible origins. And by the way, the iVerify report also talks about indicators of compromise, and I'm pretty sure they said that the iVerify app will find this. Based on its reverse engineering of the framework, iVerify says Karuna appears to have been built on the same foundations as known U.S. government hacking tools. From iVerify's report, and this is a quote, "This is the first observed mass exploitation of mobile phones, including iOS, by a criminal group using tools likely built by a nation-state," unquote. What they refer to is that, despite Karuna's apparent shared roots with other U.S. government-linked hacking tools, it appears to have been leaked at some point and has been deployed in campaigns by Russian spies and China-based cybercriminals. And I think this is another quote from iVerify. It says, quote, "Report after report last year showed that spyware had moved beyond the expected targets in civil society, such as journalists and dissidents, in addition to criminal operatives, to hit executives in technology and financial services, political campaigns, and other people of influence or with privileged access. The more widespread the use, the more certain a leak will occur," unquote. In observed campaigns, iVerify and Google say the exploit kit was delivered via watering hole attacks on compromised websites, including fake cryptocurrency services designed to lure victims to malicious pages. On these campaigns, the final payload appears financially motivated, with modules designed to extract cryptocurrency wallet data and recovery phrases from infected devices. To read iVerify's full report, follow this link. And that's another really detailed report on this if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty. Okay, so this is why it's so dangerous to develop spyware based on vulnerabilities. These exploits have a way of leaking. What this article basically is saying is that usually when a nation state develops this sort of an exploit, they use it very sparingly, because if they use it too far and wide, someone's going to figure out they got hacked. They're going to report it to Apple or Google or whoever, and they're going to fix it. And then all of a sudden this exploit won't work anymore. But according to this article, they've been seeing that they're starting to use them more broadly, and they're using it so widely that it gets leaked. And then bad guys get a hold of it. I guess you could argue in some cases these governments aren't being great either. But anyway, criminal organizations and other foreign nation states get a hold of it, and they start using it. So what was this righteous tool for the good guys quickly becomes a malicious tool in the hands of the bad guys too. So it is in our collective best interest for our intelligence agencies to responsibly disclose these vulnerabilities to the software makers instead of hoarding them for their own private use, because they will not stay private. Even if the exploits aren't leaked, they can still be independently found by our adversaries who are looking for the exact same types of bugs. So we really need to affirmatively choose defense over offense. Our intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, when they find bugs like this, should be reporting them so they get fixed, so we're all safer, including all the politicians and military folks who are vulnerable because these bugs are out there. So anyway, that's really the commentary I wanted to make here. But make sure your iOS devices are up to date. As long as you're using a modern version of iOS, you are not vulnerable to these attacks. All right, this one's from Yahoo News, and we've learned that Israel figured out how and where to assassinate the leader of Iran by hacking into Tehran's traffic cameras. All right, this is short. A Financial Times report reveals Israel used hacked traffic cameras and AI to map Supreme Leader's Ali Khamenei's movements before his assassination. 30 missiles were used in the precision strike. I'm not sure how much precision you need when you're using 30 missiles. But anyway, Israel hacked into Tehran's traffic cameras in order to surveil the daily life of senior Iranian figures in preparation for Operation Roaring Lion, according to a report by the Financial Times published on Monday. The report said that Israeli intelligence mapped out a life pattern for the Ayatollah and his security personnel, including travel routes, hours of activity, and the identities of the senior figures who were usually with the late Iranian leader, who was killed in an airstrike on Saturday. And of course, this was a week ago. The report also mentions that Israel used artificial intelligence tools alongside algorithms to sort through vast amounts of information that was gathered about the Iranian leadership and its movements. Additionally, the CIA provided another human source to certify the exact location where the leader was set to be on the day of his assassination. Okay, so let me sum that up for you. Tehran, the capital of Iran, has traffic cameras because a lot of cities have traffic cameras. There's probably a lot of public cameras that are connected to the internet all over the place, just like there are in all of our cities now as well. And so Israel hacked into those cameras remotely and basically had free visuals of everything that was going on inside the city and was able to track down the leader of Iran and all the senior leadership around him and figure out what their patterns were. This is something that would normally take on the ground, in-person human spies to do, but they didn't have to because they had cameras everywhere. So we talk a lot about privacy invasion and mass surveillance, and we think about the implications of that and our government or local law enforcement being able to follow us around and know where we go and who we associate with. But this exact same technology can be used to kill people. And whether or not you think that could happen in your country, it can also be used for much more common and mundane invasions of privacy like stalking. So I will also note that Russia hacked into public webcams in Ukraine to help them dial in their targets as they were bombing and launching missiles into the country for the war. So these same cameras that we're using to find criminals and people who run stoplights and people we don't like can be used by foreign adversaries as well. All right, moving on. This one's about Meta, aka Facebook, and their latest version of their Ray-Ban glasses with built-in video cameras and AI. And this is from Apple Insider. Smart glasses are a trendy item that relies on cameras to feed AI models and to answer queries. However, while this is viewed as a fun feature by many and a way to film their life in a hands-free way, it's still a massive privacy issue if not used correctly. An investigation by a Swedish newspaper on February 27th looked into the workings of the Meta Ray-Ban partnership and its AI glasses. It found that the footage is collected and seen by many eyes, including human trainers of AI. Anonymous sources from a company in Nairobi, Kenya, revealed that they have seen footage of people at their most private and vulnerable, times when the users of Meta smart glasses would rather not have the cameras rolling. Sama is a Kenyan subcontractor of Meta, supplying workers who could identify things in images and video to train Meta's AI. Thousands of people would draw boxes on screens identifying items that are then fed into the AI system to improve its models. One man told the reporter he could see people going to the bathroom or removing clothes. However, he admits he didn't know if the users were aware of being captured, and that they probably wouldn't want the footage to be seen elsewhere. Other employees also came forward to report, detailing what they saw. One explained that they saw a man put the glasses on a bedside cabinet and leave the room, only for a woman to come in and change her clothes. The videos shown to the data annotators also go further, including credit card details and sexual acts. While some footage certainly could have been filmed on purpose by the user, it's thought that many instances were caught without the user or the video subjects being fully aware. All in sensitive situations that would be compromising if they were leaked. The use of humans to train AI using data isn't anything new to the industry. Companies rely on teams of workers to try and sort through data and to correct accuracy issues, often in countries where it's cheap to hire small armies of employees. However, Meta and others assure the public that their systems are private, At the very least, employees working on the supplied footage have to sign a non-disclosure agreement to work on it at all. Indeed, the sensitive data that is seen by the employees isn't intended to train the AI models at all. As for the people appearing in the videos, there are anonymization systems in place to cover faces, but this is not entirely reliable. One former Meta employee explained that faces are sometimes visible, with difficult lighting conditions sometimes to blame. As for what happens to the footage, Meta was asked about how long voice recordings and video clips were stored, among other privacy questions. It took 2 months for a response that only explained how data is transferred from the glasses to the mobile app and referred reporters to Meta's AI privacy policy. Okay, so privacy policies are not the answer. Most of them, particularly from companies like Meta, are impenetrable, probably deliberately so. There's all sorts of wiggle room and loopholes in those things, and they're very confusing and hard to read, and I'm pretty sure that's on purpose. So if you haven't heard, Meta is making these special Ray-Ban glasses. Those are the kind of classic 50s and 60s glasses that are thick black frames, and in the corners, like where the hinge would be, is a tiny little camera, and that camera is connected to your phone, and it can project things on the inside of the glasses, so, maybe it'll tell you who you're looking at, for example. I still think that's a cool feature, but obviously the privacy implications of this are severe, and people either are not realizing that they're leaving their glasses on, or maybe they need to leave them on because they probably are prescription glasses, and they're filming everything, including going to the bathroom or changing clothes or someone near them changing clothes, and apparently having sex. And what they are not thinking carefully enough about is that video is going to the cloud. And in some cases, like we've seen before when we've talked about this a long time ago when smart speakers were a thing, and you were telling, I don't want to say the word because I don't want to trigger anybody's devices, but the Apple or the Amazon products that listen for the wake word and then, set a timer or put something on your shopping list or whatever, those voice snippets, some small percentage of them, randomly usually, and anonymously hopefully, were sent to groups of people whose job it is to make sure that the computer responded correctly, that it interpreted what you said properly and did the right thing. So it was quality control. I understand why they're doing that, though you should definitely be able to opt out of that. And that's what's really going on here. But in this case, it's video. Anyway, these Meta glasses are just a nightmare. I think there was also a case where Mark Zuckerberg, when he was testifying at trial, because Meta is on trial for various things. Anyway, he was called in to testify in court, and either he or some of his entourage were wearing these glasses, and the judge lost it and told them they had to remove the glasses. They could not wear those glasses in the courtroom. Okay, moving on. This one's from Ars Technica, and I'm actually not going to read all of this. It's a really long article, and it's very technical, but I will read the headline, which says, "New AirSnitch attack bypasses Wi-Fi encryption in homes, offices, and enterprises." Okay, so that doesn't sound good, but I think they've actually changed that headline. I think the original was, "New AirSnitch attack breaks Wi-Fi encryption in home, offices, and enterprises." And yeah, that sounds a lot worse than it actually is. So I'm not going to read this whole article. If you want to read it, there's a link in the show notes. But I think it seriously overstates the security risks here. And Ars Technica is usually better about this, so I was kind of surprised. But anyway, here's my take on what's going on here. So Wi-Fi encryption protects the connection between your device and the router. That's the over-the-air part. But once the traffic, your data, reaches the router, the network still has to deliver that to other devices, usually some server out on the internet, but could be devices local to your home network. So AirSnitch exploits weaknesses in how routers manage that internal traffic. So the key here is that Wi-Fi encryption, the WPA2, WPA3 part, is not broken. But isolation between the devices that are connected to that router isn't as strong as people might have assumed it was. So this attack requires some special setup. So first of all, a malicious device must already be connected to the same Wi-Fi network as the victim or victim device. And once a malicious device is connected to the same Wi-Fi network that your device is on, it can possibly impersonate another device on the network or trick the router into sending traffic to the attacker, and perhaps even intercept and manipulate that data while it's in transit. So if the attacker can get away with this, they might be able to intercept your network traffic or launch a man-in-the-middle attack, maybe manipulate or redirect your connections, or just cause disconnections or kind of a denial of service situation. But if you're using encrypted applications or encrypted connections like HTTPS or encrypted apps like Signal, that still protects the contents, which in today's day and age is just about every connection. There are very few unencrypted connections these days. So the attacker must be within Wi-Fi range and join the same Wi-Fi network, which means they have to have the password, or I guess it's possible if it's a public Wi-Fi or if it's like an open guest network that doesn't have a password, that would make it easy. So avoid that. But otherwise, it means they have to know the password, or they have to have maybe compromised a device that's already connected, or again, maybe it's just an open network that doesn't have a password, which is bad. So what are the real dangers? This is another reason why you might want to avoid connecting to public Wi-Fi networks. They are trying to roll out fixes for these, but who knows when any given Starbucks Wi-Fi or whatever is going to fix that bug. But even if you do connect to a public Wi-Fi network, most of your traffic is going to be encrypted anyway, so it should be safe. Now, you could use a VPN to make sure that all your traffic is encrypted and safe if you want to be sure. Certainly, if I'm on a public Wi-Fi network, I will always try to use a VPN anyway. Or just don't use public Wi-Fi. Use your cell phone as a hotspot instead. That's what I do. I almost never use public Wi-Fi. And this is yet another reason why you want to keep your cheap and possibly insecure IoT devices on your guest network, not on your main network. A properly designed router will not allow those devices on your guest network to run this or other attacks against your more valuable devices on your main Wi-Fi network. Now, some routers don't implement that properly, probably cheap routers in particular, but it's still a good practice. And also, make sure you have passwords for all your Wi-Fi networks, good passwords, even your guest network. All right, next up, this is from TechCrunch, and who could have seen this coming? All of us. It's about a Microsoft Office bug that exposed confidential emails to their Copilot AI. Microsoft has confirmed that a bug allowed its Copilot AI to summarize customers' confidential emails for weeks without permission. The bug, first reported by Bleepy Computer, allowed Copilot Chat to read and outline the contents of emails since January, even if customers had data loss prevention policies to prevent ingesting their sensitive email information into Microsoft's large language model. Copilot Chat allows paying Microsoft 365 customers to use the AI-powered chat feature in its Office software products, including Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Microsoft said the bug means that draft and sent email messages, quote, with a confidential label applied, are being incorrectly processed by Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, unquote. The tech giant said it began rolling out a fix for the bug earlier in February. When reached, a Microsoft spokesperson would not say how many customers are affected by the bug. Earlier this week, the European Parliament's IT department told lawmakers that it blocked the built-in AI features on their work-related devices, citing concerns that the AI tools could upload potentially confidential correspondence to the cloud. So, okay, big tech companies like Microsoft, and frankly even smaller tech companies, are shoving AI features down our throats. They're building these features in, making them integral to the product without considering the consequences. And we, the users, are not being given a real choice in most cases. And we simply do not have a firm grasp on the new types of security issues that come with all of these AI frameworks, and we're learning them quickly. But we are in full-on YOLO mode. You only live once. And move fast and break things, which is something that Mark Zuckerberg famously told his employees. And that philosophy, and certainly this new YOLO mode, is not a good idea for tech products. And it's particularly dangerous with a fundamentally new and poorly understood technology like artificial intelligence. We've got to stop putting this into everything and not giving users the chance to say no. And because they're embedding this stuff deeply into the products and even into the operating system, it's really not easy to disable or turn off. That is a big mistake. And in this case, there was a bug that you don't want AI looking at private stuff. And yet there was a bug in Outlook that basically meant that your confidential emails were probably being sent to the cloud to be helpfully summarized. And then, who knows what happened to that data or who might be able to get at that data for confidential stuff. I wonder if they're going to get sued over this. They honestly should. We need we need some consequences for rushing headlong into this kind of stuff, so that maybe some of these companies will think twice. All right, we do have some good news. I usually try to save that for the end here. I told you recently about Discord, which is a very popular social media site. Social media is a weird way to put it, but it's a social site that allows for chatting and video calls and audio chats with groups of people that really has some amazing features. I use it for my patrons. I'm in several Discord rooms. It's got a lot of great features. Unfortunately, it's not end-to-end encrypted, so you can't really use it for anything private. But anyway, because of all these age verification laws popping up everywhere around the globe, Discord basically decided to proactively implement age verification on any of their rooms or servers that were 18 plus. And they got a lot of blowback over that. And because of that blowback, because of people like us, you and me, listening to this podcast, getting upset and telling Discord how upset we are, they have changed their mind, at least temporarily. And they've also implemented some really good ground rules around the use of this. So let me read this article from 9to5Mac. Earlier this month, Discord faced significant pushback from its users after announcing plans for a global age verification rollout. As originally communicated, starting in March, Discord users would need to undergo a face scan or submit ID forms to continue having full access to the service. Until that verification was submitted, all users would be restricted to teen-level access. In other words, unless you could prove you were an adult, you would be treated as a minor. Discord initially responded to the outcry with some key clarifications it failed to communicate at first. For example, it emphasized that many users never access the kind of adult-only spaces that would require age verification. But today, in a new blog post, co-founder and CTO Stanislav Vishnevsky went even further. Per the post, age verification will no longer be required in March. Instead, it's being pushed to the second half of 2026. More significant than the delay, though, is several key details changing that should make the eventual rollout far less controversial. And there's 5 points here. First, adding more verification options. We already had alternatives in development, including credit card verification. We'll complete and expand those before scaling globally, so you have more options you're comfortable with. 2, vendor transparency. We'll document every verification vendor and their practices on our website and make it clear in the product who each vendor is. We've also set a new requirement. Any partner offering facial age estimation must perform it entirely on device. If they don't meet that bar, we won't work with them. 3, a new spoiler channel option. We know many communities use age-restricted channels not for adult content, but for topics people prefer to engage with on their own terms. Spoilers, politics, and heavier conversations. We're building a dedicated spoiler channel option so communities don't have to age gate their server just to give members that choice. 4, a technical blog post before global launch. We'll publish a detailed post explaining how our automatic age determination systems work, including the signal categories and privacy constraints, so you can evaluate our approach for yourselves. And finally, 5, age assurance data in our transparency reports. We'll include how many users were asked to verify, what methods they used, and how often our automated systems handled it without any user interaction. So based on these changes, it seems likely that when Discord does finally require age verification from some users, it shouldn't stir quite the reaction that the initial plan did. So everyone else on the planet who's thinking about rolling out age verification should take this to heart and follow this carefully. Discord learned some big lessons when doing this, and all the other companies looking to do this should learn from Discord's experience here. So I also note that Discord, I think maybe it was only in the UK, was talking about using a company called Persona. I think I mentioned this when we talked about this story a few weeks ago. But they were set to employ much more invasive techniques to verify your age, including sending information up to the cloud. And Persona, it turns out, was associated with Peter Thiel's very creepy Palantir company. So they've definitely backed away from them, which is good. But I'm really glad to see that Discord is listening to their users and understanding that people don't like this stuff. There's still a lot of problems with age gating. Don't get me wrong. We still have to deal with that. A lot of that is coming from laws, though, not from Discord. Discord, in its defense, is really just complying with laws that are going into effect around the globe. Now, they're also pre-complying by doing this everywhere instead of just where the jurisdictions require it. But they apparently have learned some serious lessons from this, and it just goes to show you that resistance, pushback, works. So keep it up. Whenever these things pop up, don't just take it lying down. You can make a difference. All right, next up, this is from Senator Ron Wyden, who does some amazing work in privacy. He and some other senators have resurrected a bill around surveillance transparency. And I'll just read part of their press release here. It says, U.S. Senators Ron Wyden, who's Democrat from Oregon, and Steve Daines, a Republican from Montana, today reintroduced legislation to require public reporting and notice of the hundreds of thousands of criminal surveillance orders issued by courts each year. Those orders are typically sealed indefinitely, keeping government surveillance hidden for years, even when the targets are never charged with any crime. Unlike phone wiretaps or bank record subpoenas, there is no requirement for people to be notified when their emails, location, and web browsing records or other digital information is obtained by the government. The Government Surveillance Transparency Act would change that and bring transparency to court-ordered surveillance. And there's lots of quotes in here, of course, from all the sponsors, but let me just give the quote from Ron Wyden. He says, quote, "Law-abiding Americans deserve to know when and how their government tries to spy on them. This bill establishes a clear process to ensure the government can't conduct surveillance operations in the dark by misusing sealing orders with common sense protections to make sure that active investigations aren't compromised," unquote. The bill draws on transparency best practices from other areas of surveillance law and reforms pioneered by several federal courts nationwide. Specifically, the act would, and there's a bullet list of items here. 1. Require law enforcement to notify targets about subpoenas and court-ordered surveillance of their electronic data, similar to existing rules for wiretaps and bank subpoenas. 2. Permit providers and other interested parties to challenge sealing orders, requiring the government to pay the challenger's costs and legal fees if it loses. 3. Require that surveillance applications and orders eventually be unsealed and docketed, ensuring they are available to the public and press once it no longer disrupts an investigation or puts individuals at risk. 4. Require courts to publish online basic data about every surveillance order they authorize, while not revealing any personal information that could disrupt an active investigation. 5. Require that law enforcement notify courts if they search the wrong person, house, or device pursuant to an order issued by the court, or if the provider discloses data not authorized by the court. And finally, 6, require the Administrative Office of the Courts to expand the annual wiretap reports to include data on the surveillance of stored communications, interception of metadata, and gag orders. Okay, so I think, again, that's a good first step. Basically, yeah, bring it on. This is a minimal but necessary first step. Transparency is paramount. The Constitution allows for reasonable and limited searches. That's all fine, but we can't just do it secretly. In a democracy, the citizenry need to be aware of what its government is doing so that we can vote accordingly when the time comes. And in between elections, make our voices heard. So yeah, I think it makes total sense to make these things public with, again, caveats for you don't want to screw up an active investigation. But once that investigation is over, or once people have been cleared of the crimes, certainly, or when it doesn't interfere with an investigation, people should be aware that they're being spied on, should have the ability to challenge it in court, and these things should not be kept secret. And there's one other thought I had when I was reading this, and I've had this thought many times before, but I want to take this opportunity to express an idea. And that is, I think we need to find some way to limit the scope of digital device and cloud data searches, in the same way that we limit searches on homes and businesses. You don't get to go looking through everything, going on a fishing expedition when you get a warrant to search a place. You have to tell them what you expect to find, where you expect to find it, and you're not allowed to dig through everything. But we don't have any notion of that for digital devices. If you turn over your phone or your laptop, to my understanding, and again, I'm not a lawyer, once you get that, you can look anywhere. So we need some way to similarly restrict what data is searched on confiscated devices or when looking through cloud accounts. Maybe we need an operating system to somehow support this, or maybe we just need an impartial third party to collect the data that is outlined in the warrant and just give over that data. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe there already are some provisions for this that I'm not aware of. But if we don't have these kind of limitations in place for digital searches, we need to find some way to make that happen. All right, next up, this is from the Associated Press, and it's about a call in California to remove covert license plate readers. More than 24 privacy and advocacy organizations are calling on California Governor Gavin Newsom to remove a network of covert license plate readers deployed across Southern California that the groups believe feed data into a controversial U.S. Border Patrol predictive domestic intelligence program that scans the country's roadways for suspicious travel patterns. This is a quote from a letter that was written by the EFF and the Imperial Valley Equity and Justice and some other nonprofits. It says, quote, "We ask that your administration investigate and release the relevant permits, revoke them, and initiate the removal of these devices," unquote. An Associated Press investigation published in November revealed that the U.S. Border Patrol, an agency under U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had hidden license plate readers in ordinary traffic safety equipments like traffic cones. The data collected by the Border Patrol plate readers was then fed into a predictive intelligence program monitoring millions of American drivers nationwide to identify and detain people whose travel patterns it deemed suspicious. AP obtained land use permits from Arizona showing that the Border Patrol went to great lengths to conceal its surveillance equipment in that state, camouflaging it by placing it inside orange and yellow construction barrels dotting highways. The letter said the group's research has identified a similar network of devices in California, finding about 40 license plate readers in San Diego and Imperial counties, both of which border Mexico. More than 24 of the plate readers identified by the groups were hidden in construction barrels. The letter cited the AP's reporting, which found that the Border Patrol uses a network of cameras to scan and record vehicle license plate information. An algorithm flags vehicles deemed suspicious based on where they came from, where they were going, and which route they took. Agents appeared to be looking for vehicles making short trips to the border region, claiming that such travel is indicative of potential drug or human smuggling. Federal agents, in turn, sometimes refer drivers they deem suspicious to local law enforcement who make a traffic stop citing a reason, like speeding or lane change violations. Drivers often have no idea why they've been caught up in a predictive intelligence program being run by a federal agency. The AP identified at least 2 cases in which California residents appeared to have been caught up in the Border Patrol's surveillance of domestic travel patterns. In one 2024 incident described in court documents, a Border Patrol agent pulled over the driver of a Nissan Altima based in part on vehicle travel data, showing that it took the driver 6 hours to travel the approximate 50 miles between the U.S.-Mexican border and Oceanside, California, where the agent had been on patrol. And according to the court document, the agent said, quote, "This type of delay in travel after crossing the international border from Mexico is a common tactic used by persons involved in illicit smuggling," unquote. In another case, Border Patrol agents said in court documents in 2023 they detained a woman at an internal checkpoint because she had traveled a circuitous route between Los Angeles and Phoenix. In both cases, law enforcement accused the drivers of smuggling immigrants into the country unlawfully and were seeking to seize their property or charge them with a crime. The intelligence program, which has existed under administrations of both parties, has drawn scrutiny from lawmakers since the AP revealed its existence last year. Again, transparency. Courts have generally upheld license plate reader collection on public roads, but have curtailed warrantless government access to other kinds of persistent tracking data that might reveal sensitive details about people's movements, such as GPS devices or cell phone location data. Some scholars and civil libertarians argue that large-scale collection systems like plate readers might be unconstitutional under the Fourth Amendment. And this is, again, quoting from these organizations who filed this petition or whatever. It says, quote, "Increasingly, courts have recognized that the use of surveillance technologies can violate the Fourth Amendment's protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. Although this area of law is still developing, the use of LPRs and predictive algorithms to track and flag individuals' movements represents the type of sweeping surveillance that should raise constitutional concerns," unquote. So there's a couple parts to this, right? First of all, apparently this has been going on a long time. They've been hiding these license plate readers inside regular orange traffic barrels. And if you go to the article, by the way, it'll show you a picture of one of these things. And the giveaway, I guess, is there's a big solar panel on a trailer next to this traffic cone. And the traffic cone on the backside, which you wouldn't see unless you were somehow catching this in your rearview mirror, on the back side of the cone as you're traveling past it is a little rectangular cutout where the camera is looking through and catching your license plate as you drive by. So this has been going on for years, apparently, under different administrations, but it wasn't until somebody uncovered this was going on that we can actually, as citizens, know that we're being surveilled and can push back on these things. Then, of course, we're also throwing AI into all this and trying to do predictive policing. This is straight out of Minority Report, where we're collecting all this mass surveillance data and then trying to predict crimes. And obviously, we're not going to get them all correct. And I shudder to think what these people went through when they got pulled over for these things and had to go through whatever process to determine that they were not, in fact, smuggling people or drugs. All right, two more things, and they're not really articles in the normal sense. Ente, the company that makes Ente Photos, and Ente Auth, two great products, and a great guy running the company. I interviewed him, I think, last September. And if you missed that, you should definitely go check it out. Vishnu is a really nice guy. And I think we talked about this in our interview, but it has finally been released, a product they're calling Ente Locker. So let me just read a little snippet here from the press release from Ente. Ever since I started working on Ente, my father has been asking me to focus on documents, not just photos. It was only when I became a parent that I understood why. There's a lot of information we have to organize: medical records, insurance policies, identity cards, passwords, and notes for emergencies. Today, I'm happy to share Locker, an app that is simple enough for our parents, flexible enough for our partners, and gentle enough to support loved ones in our absence. You can use Locker to save important documents, notes, passwords, and more, organize them into collections, share them with links, and set up trusted contacts to access them in your absence. Locker is free for up to 100 items, all features included. If you're subscribed to Ente Photos, you can store up to 1,000 items. Also, Locker is end-to-end encrypted and fully open source. We built Locker for the things that matter most. I hope it serves you well. So this is great. Now, could you use something else for this? Sure. You could use a Proton drive or some other encrypted cloud drive or some other service to hold these documents, and you could share links with those of your family as well. And even password managers today, a lot of modern password managers have these legacy account features that allow you to do these kind of things. So that's great. It's not like this functionality didn't already exist. But there's a lot to be said for having something that is dead simple, very easy to use, and does precisely one thing and does it very well. So this is a place where you can put all the stuff that your next of kin will need should you become incapacitated or for some reason unavailable for a long period of time, or of course, if you die. And like legacy features that are in password managers, the way it works is you put the documents in here and you designate who will have access to them. And then if something were to happen to you, they request access to your stuff. You know, your will, your power of attorney, maybe your key passwords for your key accounts, bank account numbers, whatever it is that your next of kin might need to deal with your estate or to help you pay your bills while you're in a coma or something. They request access to it, and if you don't say no within a time period that you can configure, they gain access to your stuff. So I've not used this yet, but I'm definitely going to give it a try. There are things like this that I've been trying to set up, and I put some of them in a Proton drive, but I would definitely want to try out this Ente Locker, and you should give it a look too. I mean, you could store up to 100 items for free. I love that it's open source. I love that it's end-to-end encrypted. And so you should definitely check it out. You need to have a plan for getting key information to your loved ones if something were to happen to you. All right, and then last but definitely not least, Privacy Guides has been doing some just amazing work. I can't sing their praises enough. And in recent years, they've really brought a lot of new stuff online that is fantastic. If you have not already done so, go to privacyguides.org. Of course, there's a link in the show notes. But they've got some fabulous resources there, a great blog, lots of good articles, a really good set of forums if you want to talk to not just the people from Privacy Guides, but a lot of other really smart and knowledgeable privacy and security people. That is a fantastic place to go. But they really just upped their game. They just created a whole new section for the website, and it's called the Privacy Activist Toolbox. Now, don't let the term activist throw you off. This is not just for protesters and big-time advocates of privacy. This is really, really for everybody. There is essential information here for anyone and everyone who cares about privacy and is concerned with where things are currently going, both at the corporate level and at government levels as well. So there's a lot of information here, but it's extremely well organized. They really made it very user-friendly, and I just want to give you like a rundown of just some of the things that are in here. And it kind of walks through in a very methodical and logical progression. It starts with things like knowing your rights and helping how you find your local privacy laws and understanding how to report violations. Choosing the right privacy tools, of course. They've already had those great resources on the site, but they also talk about more at a holistic level about things like how to avoid snake oil products and products that claim to be private but really aren't. They also talk about how to use social media wisely. There's a lot of information there about how to find and build communities for support. And yes, also to even take action should that be something you want to do. But understanding the power of collaboration and the collective nature of these problems, understanding how mass surveillance and data mining affects all of us, and not just marginalized communities, but also just at bigger levels like our democracy and society in general. There's information on why it's important to support rights groups and companies that are doing the right thing. And there's really even some very kind of philosophical stuff and about, why we should be taking care to be supportive and understanding and empathetic and showing grace for people trying to help others and affect change instead of tearing them down when we don't agree with every single thing they say. But also meeting people where they're at and not trying to overwhelm them with stuff. How to best communicate with others who might not be aware of what's going on without alienating them or talking down to them. And of course, there's lots of great tips on how to get involved and how to make a difference, from very small and simple ways to much more complicated and kind of out there ways. It even talks about the importance of self-care and avoiding burnout, which isn't talked about enough, quite honestly. So you should definitely check it out. There's much more than that. And again, it can be overwhelming. Don't go in with the idea, I'm going to read it all. But go and look at the topics. Again, it's very nicely organized in a logical fashion. You can drill down where you want to drill down and just take your time and kind of pick through it. It's got some great stuff in there, even if you don't plan to be an activist. And it's wonderfully comprehensive, and it's just chock full of wisdom. And then on top of all that, as if that wasn't enough, it provides tons of references and links for going further. So check it out. You don't have to read it all. Scan the high-level topics and dive into the areas that interest you first. And please share it with others. I'm going to definitely put this all over my social media. It's a really, really great guide, and I can't say enough good things about it, and the site in general. So privacyguides.org, check it out, and in particular, look at their activist toolbox. So related to this, by the way, I just got done interviewing Nate and Jonah from Privacy Guides, who I've known for some time. It was a really fantastic discussion. You'll be hearing that soon. All right, so now it's time for the tip of the week. And I talked about the ClickFix attack several weeks ago, but I ran into a statistic on this that really made me stop and think. I think it was Steve Gibson, who was reading a report from a group called Huntress, saying that something like over 50% of the successful attacks in 2025 were related to this ClickFix mechanism. And so I thought, okay, let's spend a little time on this. So first of all, what is ClickFix? We've gotten used to, at this point, when we're surfing around the web, running into things like CAPTCHAs, things that want to try to make us prove that we are humans and not bots, for example. And we've also gotten used to seeing, errors when we go to web pages or when we're running applications. Something went wrong. Here's what you need to do to fix it. And oftentimes the things you need to do to fix it are these weird arcane things that we don't understand, and we just kind of blindly do them. So that is the thing that these bad guys have latched onto and are using to trick us into bypassing a lot of built-in security mechanisms on our devices to install malware. So the way you'll see this is probably usually on a web page, or you might get it on a phishing email that redirects you to this web page. But regardless of how you get there, in the end, it's some sort of a pop-up or a dialogue or a message or warning, that says, please verify that you're a human. This is the CAPTCHA thing. Or your browser verification failed, or additional verification is required, or please run this command to continue, or even this app has crashed, run this command to scan for problems or fix the issue. And then what they tell you to do is some variation of this. First, press Win+R to open a run dialog. So on Windows machines, that the Windows key is on the keyboard. You press that and R at the same time, it brings up a Windows run dialog. Then it says press Control-V to paste the command, and 3, click OK to continue. So what does that mean? A lot of people who aren't programmers or aren't big into computers probably have never ever opened a run dialog or opened a terminal window or a Windows command prompt. But these are text interfaces to the operating system. And these text interfaces are there for people who really know what they're doing to execute commands based on text. You enter the text of the command with some parameters, and your computer just goes and does it. So normally when you're working in regular Windows applications or a browser, there's all sorts of security protections built in to prevent this kind of thing from happening. The web browser itself is typically sandboxed, which means it can't really reach out and change files on your computer. It can't download something without your permission. If things are downloaded, there are mechanisms on your computer which, if you download it from a website, will mark that file with what they call the mark of the web, which says, hey, this was downloaded from the internet. Treat this very carefully. Assume that this might be malicious. And then your operating system, when you try to double click it or do other things with downloaded files from the internet, they'll be treated specially and much more carefully. What this ClickFix thing is trying to do is get you to bypass all of that. So the really tricky part about what these web pages are doing is when you go to these web pages that show you this error message, it pre-populates your clipboard on your computer with the malicious command. Doesn't ask you to do this, doesn't indicate that it's done this. And because it's your clipboard, you really don't, on modern computers today, you don't have a way to just easily see what's on your clipboard without pasting it somewhere first. So when you copy something, you use the copy command or right click to copy something, that goes on your system clipboard. And then eventually, probably what you're going to do with that is paste it somewhere else. Well, these websites, these ClickFix attack sites, helpfully copy that for you without telling you. So sitting on your clipboard right now, after you go to this web page, is a dangerous, malicious command that is going to download and install malware. And all that needs to happen is to get you, the user, to take that copied command that's already sitting there on your clipboard, open up a terminal window or a command dialog or a run dialog, paste that command and hit enter. They're getting you to do their dirty work for them. And they're couching it in this term that makes you think, oh, look, we just got to fix something, or hey, we just got to make sure you're human, and this is how you prove that to us. And people don't understand what it is they're doing, and so they just blindly do it. But it's even more clever than that. If you actually look at the command, it's hard to really tell what it's doing. They use interesting techniques, and I've got an example in my blog article on this that shows you what one of these commands looks like. And the commands are really hard to follow by a human. And even a lot of times there's like a little comment at the end that doesn't do anything to the command line, but if you paste it into like a run dialog that has a limited width, you don't even see most of the command, and all you see at the end is this little benign comment that says fixing the problem or browser verification step or whatever that makes it just seems all the more harmless. So again, what they've done is when you go to the website, they pre-copy to your clipboard as if you had done Control-C or Command-C or right-click copy yourself, but they do it for you on your behalf. They pre-put on the clipboard this malicious command and then tell you how to go to a terminal window or a command window to paste it and run it yourself. So how do we fix this? Well, first of all, now that you know what this is, whenever you get one of these pop-ups, hopefully you never do, but if you do get one of these pop-ups that tell you to do this, you now know what it is you're actually doing and you will just not do it. Close the web page, just walk away and pat yourself on the back that you avoided this problem. But here's the bottom line. You shouldn't have to worry about this. This is a failing of the operating system. Apple and Microsoft need to address this problem in macOS and Windows, and they need to do it right away because this is really getting out of control. So just off the top of my head, and maybe they come up with something better, but I think that we need to do some, if not all, of these three things. First of all, everything copied to your clipboard, anything that can be subsequently pasted somewhere else, should know and remember where it came from. This is the same as a mark of the web bit of metadata that is associated with files that you download from the internet. Everything that goes onto your clipboard, there should be metadata associated with that says where it came from, when you clipped it, and also potentially a flag that says this could be dangerous. So that when you then go to paste it into a terminal, the operating system could say, hey, wait a minute, you know where this came from, right? This came from some web page. Do you really want to run this command? And at least offer some friction there. Also, the clipboard is really not visible in a lot of cases. There are clipboard plugins that you can get, and I've used them, that'll give you a nice clipboard history so you could see multiple things that you've copied in the past and go back to things more than just one deep. That's very handy. But it also gives you a way to actually see what is sitting there on your clipboard. that's not really obvious to most people, and I think it needs to be more obvious. There should be a very easy way somehow in the operating system to see what is currently sitting on the clipboard, and along with this metadata that comes with it, by the way. And then also, I think web browsers should not be able to automatically put text onto your clipboard without any user interaction whatsoever. At the very least, it should be warning and telling you that that happened. And I also think that there should be a toggle in the web browser that just disallows that, period. And it should be on by default. Maybe I'm missing something, but I cannot think of a situation where going to a web page should automatically, without any user interaction whatsoever, be able to put something on my clipboard. Now, I will say that people that know a lot about computers, especially programmers like myself, we do this all the time. When we install software, very often we are literally copying commands from a web page and pasting them into a terminal or run command and hitting return. And it's dangerous. You really do need to know what you're doing, but it happens a lot. And so there needs to be a way to bypass this, or maybe disable the warnings for a couple hours or something, because otherwise it's going to drive programmers nuts. But by default, for most people, we really need some more built-in protections against this. And that really needs to come from the browser makers and from the operating system vendors. All right, so there's your news and my little tip/rant of the week. All right, everybody, thanks for hanging in there. That was a good news show. Looking ahead, my top patrons on Thursday will get their Merlin's Musings private podcast. This week, I'm going to be talking about an ambitious project that I've been putting together, still working on, honestly, to create a personal AI assistant not unlike OpenClaw, without all the privacy and security issues. I was inspired by that, and I thought, how can I do that, but not in a way that is ridiculously insecure and horrible about privacy? So, for example, all the AI in my system is going to be 100% local to the device. Well, okay, most of it. I might use some cloud-based AI for very non-personal stuff, like summarizing a news article, for example. But all of this is on a personal server that I own that is in my house, with lots of restrictions and containment to limit the blast radius of any kind of failure. And also related to this, another part of this project is I've just decided that I can no longer do software development on my personal computers. The supply chain attacks and the vulnerabilities in the development tools and cloud services have really spooked me. There's been a lot of really bad problems with that in recent years. And with AI, it's just getting worse. Plus, a lot of these development frameworks, when you install them on your computer, they need privileged access so that if something does happen with them, things can go really sideways quickly. And so I have just decided that I need to create a sandbox for my software development work, in particular some AI software development work. And I need to get it off my computer. So this server that I'm creating also is kind of a sandbox for development. So anyway, I'm going to get into some of those details for my patrons on Thursday. So next week, you'll be learning about surveillance pricing. We'll be talking with representatives from both Consumer Reports and More Perfect Union. And it's based on a fascinating and rather disturbing study they recently performed. And it's very eye-opening. So that's going to be a great interview. That'll be next week. And then the interview after that is when I'll be talking with Nate and Jonah from Privacy Guides. I've already recorded that interview. It was a lot of fun. We talk about how we, approach privacy advocacy and touch on some, very timely topics. It's a really interesting discussion, and we had a great time. So that'll be coming up soon. And then not too much further down the line, I'll be talking with Cindy Cohen about her new book and her wonderful, illustrious career at the EFF, and talking again to Carissa Valise about her brand new book, which is coming out very soon, called Prophecy. And I've got a lot of other great stuff in the works, including an interview about employee surveillance, which will be very interesting as well. So that'll do it for this week. Take care. Stay safe, everybody. And until next time, as always, don't get caught with your drawbridge down.